travel down to your local coffee shop and you'll probably be dipping one of these into your cup of joe. But what if I told you that's not what you should be dipping it in? And probably you're not even calling it by the right name. Well, let's learn about that today on Bob Appetit. For an older style Cantucci recipe, we're going to need 500 grams of 00 flour, 450 grams of sugar, 150 grams of almonds, not peeled, 70 grams of pine nuts, and 3 whole eggs plus 2 yolks. For a more modernized Cantucci recipe, we're going to need 360 grams of flour, 200 grams of granulated sugar, 107 grams of almonds, 57 grams of unsalted butter, 40 grams of dried cherries, 3 large eggs, 9 grams of vanilla extract, 8 grams of baking powder, 3 grams of coarse salt, and 1 teaspoon of lemon zest. Biscotti date back to the Roman times, meaning twice baked. In Latin, biscotti were perfect for soldiers, fishermen, and sailors because the tube baking process helped ensure the longevity of these staples well through long theater campaigns. So much so that Pliny the Elder once quipped that he was pretty sure these things would be edible for centuries, sort of like a Roman Twinkie. But when the Roman Empire fell, so did the interest in this staple. It wasn't until the Renaissance period that we see a resurgence of the biscotti in the court of Medici. And it wasn't until the 1800s that a scholar by the name of Amando Baldanzi found what he believed to be the original recipe that the Roman soldiers were going to use. And a baker by the name of Antonio Mattei took that original recipe and then transformed it into a sensation. Now this recipe was extremely simple, using only flour, eggs, and sugar, plus whatever hearty, strong nut would have been found, which most likely would have been almonds and possibly pine nuts. So let's take a look at this biscotti, or as Antonio decided to call it, Cantucci. First, preheat our oven to 350 degrees Fahrenheit. Now combine your eggs, yolk, and sugar into a stand mixer. Start on low and work your way up to a medium, mixing for no more than 2 minutes. Now add in half of your flour and mix on low until the flour just starts to mix in with the eggs, and then add in the remaining flour as well as your almonds and pine nuts. Don't overmix here. You want the dough to just come together and you see no more flour. Expect it to be sticky. Pull out the dough onto a well-floured working surface and divide it into 2 pieces. My board's a little small, so I had to leave half the dough behind and work 1 piece at a time. You'll stretch these out into 1.5 to 2 inch wide loaves by pressing down on the tops and in on the sides, working them into rectangles. Cap the sides with the flat of your hand and push in any escaping almonds. Repeat for the other loaf, or make a mess as you try to do the technique in the air. Now place your loaves in the oven for about 35 to 45 minutes when they're just starting to brown. Then take the tray out, allowing the biscotti loaves to cool completely. 15 to 30 minutes, but it's fine to let them cool overnight in a dry place. When you first bake a cookie, bread, or biscuit, you're gelatinizing the starch in the flour. Now, depending upon the sugars, proteins, and moisture, that gelatinous shape that will take hold, whether it be large, soft, porous structures or very tight, dense structures, can be all over the place and quite frankly, another video. But the question is, why are we then baking it a second time? The reason is moisture removal. See, we're not looking to cook anything here. We're just trying to draw out all of the excess moisture that will allow these Cantucci or biscotti to last for months as opposed to days or a week. Perfect for a long march to Gaul. So why do we slice it before the second bake? Well, that's to avoid dextridization, or a fancy word for browning. See, if we were to leave it in a huge loaf and try to do the second bake, it would take a long time for that heat to get right into the center and dry it out. And in that time, the outside would become dark and burned. By slicing it, we're able to dry out the center pieces of the loaf much faster. To put the bis in biscotti, we're going to preheat our oven to 300 degrees Fahrenheit. Take your cooled loaf and make diagonal cuts about 3/4 inch thick to create that biscotti shape. Lay them back on the baking sheets, cut side down, and then slide your sheet into the oven for 10 to 15 minutes. Remove and let cool completely. They may feel a little soft when they come out, but they'll stiffen as they cool. Optionally, you can also turn off your oven and let sit overnight. Now you might have heard the term biscotti, Biscotti di Prato, or Cantucci for this particular dish. Why all the names? Well, the answer is a linguistic shift in the Italian language. See, biscotti, originally meaning twice baked, started to go the same European route as you might find in the UK with the term biscuit, in that it now just means, generically, a cookie. No matter the number of times baked, a biscotti is just any kind of cookie. Whereas Cantucci, rooting off the term cantuccio, which is believed to just be a bread with a thick amount of crust, started to become the term for this more drier type of cookie. Now that first recipe is based more on the older Roman style and what Mattei likely uses in his recipe. And it is called Cantucci di Prato for a reason, because it uses the ingredients key to Prato, or Tuscany, which are going to be pine nuts and especially almonds. But as this recipe branched out, not only along Italy, but throughout the world, the types of ingredients that went into it started to shift as well. We know that in the court of Medici, they used herbs and spices and dried fruit in their recipes. And in fact, depending on where you are in Italy, they're probably just gonna grab whatever nuts are most common to them and maybe some dried fruit and put them together. And in some places, dip them in chocolate. So what we're gonna do next is we're going to bring this to a more modernized style recipe, add a leavening agent, and some dried fruit. All right, let's bake it. For our second cherry and almond recipe, preheat your oven to 350 degrees Fahrenheit. Now mix your flour, baking powder, and salt into a bowl and set aside. In a stand mixer, combine butter and sugar, starting on a low speed and moving up to medium until fluffy, about 2 minutes. Mix in your 3 eggs, one at a time, and then add your vanilla extract and lemon zest. Now drop the speed down to low and add in your flour mixture, followed quickly by your dried cherries and almonds. Mix until just combined like before. From here, the process is the same. Shape half of your dough into a log about 2 inches wide and ½ inch to 1 inch thick. Transfer to a baking sheet lined with parchment paper and then bake for 35 to 45 minutes until just starting to brown. Let cool completely and then slice diagonally. Return the slices to the sheet pan, cut side down, and then place in an oven at 300 degrees Fahrenheit. Remove after 10 to 15 minutes and let cool completely again. You can enjoy your Cantucci any way you like, but it's pretty hard, so you're gonna wanna dip it in something. In America, we tend to dip our Cantucci in coffee, but if you were in Italy, especially in Tuscany, you're gonna dip it in Vinsanto. Now Vinsanto is more like a port. It's a sweet dessert wine, which matches the rich, earthy elements inside of these cookies. And because they are so granular and porous in there, and when you dip them, they become nice and soft. But what do you like to dip your Cantucci in? Wine, coffee, tea? Leave a comment down below. And don't forget to like and subscribe. And as always, study at the dinner table. We'll catch you next time on Bob Appetit.